Mr. Deputy Chairman, I confess that while the bill before us has one or two good points, I am not at all happy about the form in which it has been placed before us. It does not seek to remove any of the major defects in our existing election law. We all know the serious imperfections of the Representation of the People Act 2001 that is in existence now with such amendments as were made in 2006. But this bill, which seeks to remove defects, does not touch any of the major defects that are found in the measure. Of what use is this bill which deals with only minor points? It deals with one or two major points also, and I shall refer to them. But by and large, the bill is of a minor character, and I do not think any harm would have been done if the government had waited 1 or 2 years more, studied the report of the Election Commission, and given us time also to study it, and then had come with a final decision with regard to the amendments that should be made in the existing act. I shall refer only to one point in this connection. In the Act of 2001, as it was before it was amended in 2006, election expenses meant all expenses incurred in connection with the election of the candidate, whether authorized by him or his election agent or not. In 2006, however, this restriction was removed. I mean, this connotation of the term election expenses was altered, and the return of election expenses was to relate only to the expenses incurred or authorized by the candidate or his election agent. That meant that unauthorized persons could spend money in the interest of a candidate, but the expenditure incurred by them was not to be shown in the return of election expenses. If the limit prescribed in the rules is to have no meaning, or if it is to be of such a character as not to limit the maximum expenditure that can be incurred in connection with the election, it is obvious that the wealthy will always stand a better chance in a contest than a meritorious candidate who is poor. But that feature has not been touched. I should like to deal with 2 or 3 new provisions that are sought to be introduced in the Act by this bill. The Law Minister, while explaining the provisions of this bill, referred only to Clause 8 of the bill, which deals with the question of ordinary residence of a person. I am surprised that he did not refer along with this to Clause 6 of the bill. What is the significance of this omission? The candidates to the Lok Sabha are not affected in the least by this deletion of the words. Under the law as it stands at present, a man who is qualified to be a candidate in a particular state by virtue of his registration as a voter in that state can seek election to the Lok Sabha from any other state and from any constituency in the country, but the effect of it will be felt only by a candidate for election to the Council of States. I can very well understand the Lok Sabha readily making the change because its members are not at all affected by it. But I should like to understand the reasons that led the government to acquiesce in this change. Indeed, perhaps the government themselves proposed it in the bill. What are the reasons that led the government to suggest this change? What harm would be done if the name of a man is entered in two constituencies in two different states? It is obvious that he cannot vote in two different states at the same time. The last point that I come to is regarding the amendment of section 118 of the Representation of the People Act 2001, that is clause 36 of the bill as passed by the Lok Sabha. The law minister told us that under the definition of bribery as it exists in the 2001 Act, the Supreme Court had decided that in a particular kind of cases the offense of bribery does not exist. It might be interesting for government to note that the present state of the law is due to the amendment that was made in 2006. Till that time, sir, corrupt practices were divided into two categories: major corrupt practices and minor corrupt practices, and the receipt of a gratification, that is a bribe, was a minor corrupt practice which could make the election tribunal declare the election of a returned candidate to be void under certain circumstances.